What if I told you that some of the most powerful medicines you could possibly use are growing wild in ditches, abandoned lots, and maybe even your own backyard? We live in an era where we run to the pharmacy for every minor scrape, cough, and ache, spending a fortune on synthetic chemicals. But long before sterile hospitals and expensive pills, our ancestors relied on the raw, unfiltered power of nature to survive. Today, I am going to show you 10 forgotten medicinal plants that possess incredible, scientifically backed healing properties. You will want to stick around, because the plant right at number 1 is probably being trampled under your feet right now, and the one waiting at number 10 is the original powerhouse that modern medicine copied, but could never quite perfect. Number 1. Plantain weed. We are not talking about the banana-like fruit you find in the grocery store, but the low-growing, broad-leafed weed pushing its way up through the cracks in your driveway and sprawling across your lawn. Native Americans called it the white man's footprint because it seemed to sprout everywhere European settlers walked. But they quickly adopted this resilient little plant as an indispensable trailside first aid kit. For centuries, hunters and pioneers used it to treat venomous bites, excruciating stings, and jagged cuts when they were miles away from civilization. Modern science has completely validated this ancient wisdom, proving that plantain leaves contain powerful compounds like allantoin and aucubin, which act as fierce anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, and blood-coagulating agents. When you are out in the wild and feel the burning, swollen agony of a bee sting, or suffer a nasty gash, simply pluck a fresh, green plantain leaf. You want to chew it up briefly in your mouth to break down the tough cell walls, releasing its vibrant green, astringent juices, and then pack that crushed mass directly onto your wound. Within minutes, you will feel the fiery pain and throbbing heat begin to subside as the plant works its magic. You can also harvest these leaves, dry them out, and steep a few ounces in boiling water to create a soothing medicinal wash. While plantain is incredibly safe for external applications, always make sure you are harvesting from areas at least a few feet away from heavily trafficked roads or chemically treated lawns to avoid absorbing toxic pesticides into your bloodstream. Number 2. Yarrow. If you ever find yourself miles deep in the backcountry with a deep, bleeding wound and no gauze in your pack, this tall plant with clusters of tiny white flowers could literally save your life. For thousands of years, soldiers marched into brutal hand-to-hand combat, carrying dried yarrow in their pouches. They knew it as the soldier's woundwort because packing it into a devastating battlefield gash would rapidly staunch the bleeding. Today, clinical research has proven exactly why this ancient battlefield medic works so incredibly well. Yarrow is a rare botanical powerhouse that acts as both a hemostatic agent, meaning it aggressively stops bleeding, and a vulnerary, meaning it simultaneously accelerates tissue repair. It is packed with complex alkaloids and volatile oils that command your blood to clot, while instantly reducing agonizing inflammation. When you need to stop bleeding fast, you strip the feathery, fern-like leaves off a yarrow stem, crush them vigorously between your fingers to release the potent oils, and press them directly into the cut. You can also harvest the aerial parts, dry them, and steep about an ounce of the herb in boiling water to make a bitter but highly effective tea that breaks stubborn fevers by forcing your body to sweat. You will often find yarrow standing a few feet tall in open meadows and along hiking trails across the country. However, you must respect its raw power. Because of its intense stimulating effects on the blood and uterus, pregnant women should absolutely never ingest yarrow, and you must carefully identify it to ensure you are not mistaking it for toxic lookalikes like poison hemlock before you apply it to your skin or brew it into a medicine. Number 3. Mullein. When winter sets in and you find yourself battling a suffocating chest cold, waking up with a heavy, rattling cough, and lungs full of thick mucus, you do not need to reach for synthetic cough suppressants that just mask the problem. Instead, look for mullein, a towering plant that thrusts a dramatic spike of yellow flowers up to 6 feet into the air. For generations, traditional herbalists and frontiersmen revered this fuzzy-leafed giant as the ultimate lung tonic, relying on it to clear out bronchitis, asthma, and heavy congestion. When there were no doctors for hundreds of miles, modern laboratory analysis reveals that mullein leaves are absolutely loaded with saponins. These chemical compounds act as powerful, natural expectorants that break down the thick, stubborn sludge in your chest and stimulate your lungs to aggressively clear out the infection. To harness this respiratory lifesaver, gather the large velvety leaves and dry them thoroughly in a warm, dark place. You will want to steep a generous handful of these dried leaves in a few cups of hot water to create a soothing, earthy tea that you can drink several times a day to break up that agonizing chest congestion. But there is a crucial safety step you cannot afford to skip. The leaves are covered in thousands of tiny, highly irritating hairs that will cause severe scratching and swelling in your throat if swallowed. You must meticulously strain your brewed tea through a dense cheesecloth or a fine coffee filter to trap every single one of those microscopic hairs before you take a sip. When prepared correctly, mullein works with your body to expel sickness, acting as an internal maintenance crew that cleans your airways naturally. Number 4. Comfrey. If you take a nasty fall on a rocky trail and hear the sickening crunch of a bone or feel the sharp, tearing agony of a severely sprained ankle, your ancestors had a specific plant they turned to when a doctor was days away. They called it knitbone, a deeply descriptive folk name for a plant that literally commands your body to piece itself back together. Comfrey has been revered for centuries by healers who applied its thick, mucilaginous roots to crushed limbs and torn ligaments. Today, rigorous clinical trials have identified exactly why this works so incredibly well. Comfrey is absolutely saturated with a compound called allantoin, which aggressively stimulates rapid cell proliferation, drastically speeding up the repair of damaged bone, muscle, and soft tissue, while instantly cooling deep, throbbing inflammation. To create your own wilderness repair kit, you need to harvest the thick, black roots of the comfrey plant, scrub them clean, and dry them thoroughly. Chop the dried roots and infuse a few ounces of them into warm olive oil for several hours, then melt in a chunk of beeswax to create a thick, soothing salve that you can rub directly over bruises, sprains, and aching joints. But you must pay absolute attention to this next part, because comfrey commands deep respect. This plant contains highly potent pyrrolizidine alkaloids that will cause severe, irreversible liver damage if ingested. You must never drink comfrey tea or take it internally under any circumstances, and strictly apply your healing salves to unbroken skin. Used externally, it is like having a microscopic construction crew working tirelessly beneath your skin to rebuild your shattered tissues. Number 5. Usnea. Step into a pristine, high-altitude forest, and if you look up, you might see pale green strings hanging from the tree branches, like ghostly hair blowing in the wind. This is Usnea, widely known as old man's beard, and while it is technically a lichen rather than a traditional plant, it is arguably the most powerful wilderness antibiotic you can find in the backcountry. For generations, indigenous trackers and seasoned mountain men relied on this strange, fibrous growth to prevent deep lacerations from turning into lethal, festering infections. When they were isolated in the deep woods, modern pharmacological reviews have stunned the medical community by proving that this humble lichen is loaded with usnic acid, a fierce compound that demonstrates overwhelming clinical effectiveness against incredibly stubborn, antibiotic-resistant bacteria. If you suffer a deep gash while navigating through heavy brush, you can pull a handful of fresh Usnea straight from a tree branch, moisten it with clean water, and pack it directly into your wound as an immediate, infection-killing dressing. For a more prepared approach, you can take a few ounces of dried Usnea and soak it in high-proof alcohol for several weeks to extract those powerful acids, creating a potent antiseptic tincture that you can keep in your survival pack. However, because Usnea acts as a highly sensitive environmental sponge, It readily absorbs heavy metals and toxins from the air. You must absolutely never harvest it from areas within several miles of a highway, factory, or polluted city. And you should only gather it from pristine environments where the air is incredibly clean, to ensure you are not packing toxic pollutants into an open wound. Number 6. Toothache plant. Imagine being out in the wilderness, miles from the nearest dentist, when a sudden, blinding toothache strikes like a lightning bolt to your jaw. For centuries, indigenous tribes navigating the damp heat of the tropics relied on a bizarre, cone-shaped flower that looks like a tiny red and yellow spaceship to kill excruciating mouth pain instantly. They called it the toothache plant, and its effects are so dramatic that it feels like pure wilderness sorcery. Modern laboratory tests have demystified this ancient magic, revealing that the plant is absolutely dripping with a potent biochemical called spilantol. This aggressive compound acts as a powerful local anesthetic that rapidly penetrates the mucous membranes of your mouth, immediately shutting down pain receptors and causing a massive, buzzing numbness that rivals modern pharmaceutical gels. To unleash this botanical anesthetic, all you need to do is pluck a single flower head, usually barely an inch across, and chew it vigorously directly over the painful tooth or the inflamed mouth ulcer. Within 10 seconds, an intense electrical tingling sensation will explode across your gums, followed by a profound numbness that can entirely mask agonizing pain for over half an hour, giving you the critical relief you need to function. You can easily cultivate these potent little painkillers in your backyard garden, as long as you keep the soil moist and warm. However, you must heed a vital warning before relying on it completely. This powerful numbing agent is only a temporary shield, meaning it will completely silence the agonizing symptoms, but it will absolutely not cure an underlying abscess or a decaying root. You must use it solely to survive the crushing pain until you can reach a professional, rather than letting a hidden infection turn lethal while you feel comfortably numb. Number 7. Bone set. When a brutal, bone-crushing flu strikes and leaves you shivering under blankets, with muscles that feel like they have been shattered by a hammer, you need a remedy that fights back with equal ferocity. During the horrific influenza epidemics that swept across the country in the 19th century, nearly every pioneer household kept bundles of this towering, white-flowered marshweed hanging from their rafters. They called it bone set because it was the only thing that could break the agonizing, deep-tissue pain known back then as breakbone fever. Today, clinical researchers acknowledge that this historically revered plant acts as a fierce immune stimulant and a powerful febrifuge, meaning it physically forces your body to mount a highly aggressive, sweat-inducing fever response, to literally burn the invading virus out of your system. When you feel that gut-wrenching nausea and those deep, aching chills setting in, you need to harvest the aerial leaves and steep an ounce of the dried herb in a cup of water, heated to a rolling 212 degrees Fahrenheit. You must force yourself to drink this intensely hot brew and immediately bury yourself under heavy blankets to sweat the sickness out through your pores. You should know right now that this tea is notoriously, almost violently bitter, tasting like harsh wilderness survival in a cup. But that extreme astringency is exactly what triggers your immune system into overdrive. But you must respect its sheer physical toll on your body. Because bone set forces such a rapid and massive sweating response, you must consume gallons of fresh water alongside it to prevent severe, life-threatening dehydration. And you should never consume this potent remedy for more than a few days at a time to avoid completely exhausting your liver. Number 8. Calendula. If you have a garden in your backyard, you might already be growing a vibrant orange flower that medieval medics considered an absolute battlefield necessity. They called it the war flower because when soldiers were miles away from civilization, with jagged, infected wounds and absolutely no sterile equipment, these cheerful blooms were the only thing keeping festering infections at bay. Modern clinical trials have proven that these medieval warriors were spot on with their botanical medicine. The bright petals are overflowing with potent triterpenoids and flavonoids that aggressively hunt down microbial invaders while simultaneously stimulating your skin cells to close over severe burns and deep abrasions, faster than they ever would on their own. To build your own home emergency room, you will want to harvest these sticky flower heads on a dry afternoon and let them dehydrate entirely. You can crush a few ounces of the dried petals and submerge them in high-quality olive oil for a few weeks, creating a deeply concentrated, golden salve that you can spread over inflamed cuts, blistering burns, and agonizing scrapes. But you must never let its cheerful appearance lull you into a false sense of absolute safety. Because calendula belongs to the aggressive daisy and ragweed family, applying this potent extract to your skin, if you have severe pollen allergies, can trigger a massive, blistering contact dermatitis reaction, turning a minor scrape into a furious, spreading rash. Number 9. Barberry. As we face a terrifying modern era, where pharmaceutical antibiotics are rapidly losing their effectiveness against superbugs, we must look back to a thorny, aggressive shrub that ancient healers relied on for over 2,000 years. Across vast empires, ancient physicians utilized the violently yellow inner bark of this plant to combat vicious gut infections and lethal bouts of dysentery. Today, cutting-edge researchers are staring through microscopes in absolute awe because this ancient remedy contains an incredibly potent alkaloid called berberine. This complex compound acts as a microscopic battering ram, actively destroying the defensive shields of antibiotic-resistant bacteria, aggressively neutralizing fungal blooms, and slaughtering internal parasites that modern drugs struggle to defeat. To tap into this ancient arsenal, you must dig up the dense roots of the barberry shrub, peeling back the outer layer to harvest the neon yellow bark hiding underneath. You can boil roughly an ounce of this dried bark in a few cups of water to create an intensely bitter, deeply earthy decoction that you drink in small doses to wage war against ferocious digestive infections. But you must wield this ancient weapon with extreme caution and immense respect. Berberine is so incredibly powerful that taking high doses for more than a couple of weeks will utterly exhaust your liver, and pregnant women must never let it cross their lips, as it can forcefully trigger uterine contractions and cause devastating harm to an unborn child. Number 10. Meadowsweet. We have finally reached the plant I promised you at the very beginning, the undisputed granddaddy of modern pain relief, that pharmaceutical companies desperately tried to copy, but could never truly perfect. For centuries, traditional healers relied on this tall, fragrant plant growing in damp meadows and along riverbanks to crush debilitating fevers, agonizing arthritis, and splitting headaches. It was the original aspirin before aspirin even existed. When modern chemists finally analyzed it, they discovered it is absolutely loaded with natural salicylates, the exact chemical precursors to modern synthetic painkillers. But here is the brilliant twist of nature that scientists failed to replicate. While synthetic aspirin aggressively tears up your stomach lining and causes bleeding ulcers, Meadowsweet contains a complex matrix of natural buffering compounds that actively soothe and heal inflamed digestive tissue while simultaneously eradicating your pain. When you feel a crushing headache coming on, or your joints are screaming from a long day of brutal outdoor labor, you want to seek out the creamy white clusters of meadowsweet flowers blooming in the midsummer heat. You harvest a few ounces of the fragrant blossoms and leaves, dry them in the shade, and steep them in hot water to create a pleasantly sweet, almond-scented tea that will rapidly melt away your pain without destroying your gut. But you must treat this biological powerhouse with the exact same caution you would give a bottle of pills, because it contains high levels of natural salicylates. You must absolutely never give Meadowsweet to a child suffering from a viral fever, due to the severe risk of Reyes syndrome, and anyone with a known, dangerous allergy to standard aspirin must stay far away from this plant to avoid a life-threatening anaphylactic reaction. We have been conditioned to believe that true medicine only comes in plastic orange bottles with unpronounceable names and exorbitant price tags. But as you have seen today, the earth has been providing us with a potent, fully stocked pharmacy since the dawn of time, right in your own backyard. Nature does not just challenge you with harsh elements and rugged terrain. It masterfully equips you with everything you need to survive and heal, if you just know where to look. If this journey into ancient wilderness wisdom opened your eyes and empowered you to take control of your own health, make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave a like on this video to join our community of self-reliant individuals. Head down to the comments right now and let me know which of these incredible survival plants you are going to hunt for first.